Good afternoon to the committee and everyone who is listening. Welcome to the first hearings of the 2022 legislative session of the Ways and Means Committee. Today we have a handful of bills that shouldn't be too long, and we are going to start with Delegate Boyce and then with any possible questions. But Delegate Boyce, I will let you take it over with House Bill 160.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, Ways and Means Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. I am Regina T. Boyce here to testify on HB 160, Election Law, Party and Public Office Prohibition. The bill prohibits elected officials from also holding or registering for an elected office as a party official. The State Central Committee. This bill has passed this committee and the House in both 2020 and 2021. I submitted an amendment for further clarification. The amendment prohibits individuals from simultaneously being candidates for or holding elected office and elected party office. An elected party office is defined as an office that receives the votes of Maryland residents. The Second Amendment does not prohibit individuals from being candidates for or holding a party office that is determined exclusively by members of a central committee. Historically, the organizing of parties began in Maryland in 1824 and was codified into law in 1886. It is stated in the Maryland Manual that when primary elections developed at the end of the 19th century, state central committees formed to oversee their conduct. The role of a state central committee grassroots elected is to build party organizations in each jurisdiction. Organizing is done, of course, we know in many ways of registering folks to vote, organizing and encouraging voter turnout during primary and general elections, fundraising for the particular party, organizing volunteers for the party to elect candidates, and facilitating the vacancy process to provide nominations to the governor when a delegate or a senator resigns or is removed from their position. For decades, the practice of holding both elected offices has been questionable. The allowance of holding both positions possesses, I think, an interesting dynamic and conflict of interest for the state central committee member as roles, as well as the elected role. And the allowance assumes an automatic next in line politics and policies that distort the democratic process and the true role of the elected party positions. I, as well as many of my constituents, thank you for assisting us with, again, correcting this allowance and again, for a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Boyce. Are there any questions from the committee? Delegate Barnes?
Madam Chair, Delegate Boyce, thank you again for bringing this before the committee.
Yes, sir.
I just have one question, as you indicated, this has been before our committee on numerous occasions. What has been the problem in getting this across the finish line?
So it went into the Senate. I think there is a thought that there isn't an issue, I think, and maybe that's just more on the Senate side. They believe that there isn't an issue with elected officials being on the state central committee because they don't see a problem with it. And I think they see it as a way to help keep, I want to say this correctly, kind of keep on the ground in case there is a vacancy and maybe in the Senate side, they have more of a possibility to know who could best fit that position, but most importantly, who can help, unfortunately, maybe influence the best decision for them. So, but last year it was Senator McCray who actually got a opinion from the state attorney general's office about about who it actually affects, and they read it as it affected someone like him who was a part of like the state party. And so this is why this amendments were brought here. So it clarifies that this is about individuals who are voted in from the Maryland voters and not necessarily within the party.
So do you think with this amendment that you just clarified language, it should pass the Senate this time?
I hope so. I hope so. I pray so. I have to leave it to the process and do my due diligence, but I'm hoping so.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
I see Delegate Eversole and then Delegate Branch. Delegate Eversole?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. There's just clarification, because I think I'm correct, but I want to be sure I have it right. There would be this treats being in the party and running as distinct. So, for example, if I were on the Central Committee, I could run for an office. It's just that once I got elected to that office, I would no longer be.
That's correct.
Those could overlap, but that's great. Thanks. That's what I
Yes.
need to be clear on. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Delegate Branch?
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Delegate Boyce, for the bill. Just wanted to know, have you talked to others in the State Central Committee to see how they feel?
Yep.
And then have you also talked to, I would just say the chairs of the State Central Committee?
So when I initially was going to file this bill in December of 2019, I emailed the chair of the Central Committee in Baltimore City, for which, unfortunately, I never received a response. I waited about 3 or 4 weeks, and when I didn't hear anything, and after talking to other members, one of them who actually came to testify, who unfortunately passed away this past summer, Sharon Brackett, I never received a response. And so I went ahead and filed the bill. So I have been talking to many people, and I want to be transparent in saying this is kind of the legislation that people talk about quietly, that they want, but when it comes time publicly to talk about it, everyone wants to kind of be hush hush. And so I am trying to do my due diligence from those who have spoken to me and who do talk about it, to put this out there and leave it to the body here and the body in the Senate to determine if they also agree that this is something that we should distinguish.
Okay, because I'm only asking that question because the chair
Sure.
of Baltimore City had actually reached out to several of us. Well, I'll just say me, and her concerns, and not, agreeing with the bill. But nevertheless, my question to you also is that if a person is on the State Central Committee and have been voted in by the constituents, and then they're appointed into a position, is it then expected for them to leave the seat and not fulfill the duties that they were elected to do?
So you're saying if you were voted, not appointed to the
If I'm
state,
appointed, I'm sorry.
if you were appointed to the State Central Committee?
No, if you're appointed into say a seat, delegate or senate,
Sure.
and then but you were elected to, you were on the State Central Committee. Are they
Elected.
then, yes, are you expecting for them to then withdraw from the State Central Committee after they've been appointed into the House or the Senate?
I would say yes, because they're holding two roles as both the State Central Committee member and now a member of the Maryland General Assembly. So you're holding two essentially state offices, even though the one you were elected to in a primary and a general as a State Central Committee member.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Delegate Hornberger?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we have had this bill a number of times. So just wanted to ask some clarifying questions here.
Yes.
The ballot's a busy place. There's a lot of positions on there. Would this preclude, let's say, a county council person from holding a dual role as a Central Committee member?
Yep.
Okay.
Elected it. Yep.
And then what about like a nonpartisan school board person?
This does not affect the school board. This only speaks to the party organizations.
Okay. And then the last question would be, we had an amendment 2 years ago with delegates to the convention.
It's still on there, sir.
Still on there. Okay, great.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
You're so welcome, Delegate.
Yep.
Are there any other questions for Delegate Boyce? Delegate Lasanti?
Yes, just a quick question, and I just want to understand why you made a distinction between being a candidate for public office and being and actually being an elected official.
So technically now, if you go to file for candidacy, I believe you can, as I know it, you could be on the ballot for both those positions.
Correct.
And I'm saying,
what if you were to lose? What if you were to lose? Let's say what if you were to lose one? You would, or would you
I
have
think,
to and withdraw?
right, I think the bill sets the point that they're two distinctly different positions, and therefore you need to pick one.
Okay.
If that makes sense, Delegate.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Okay.
Thank you. And can I also add though,
Yes.
or just ask the direct
Yes.
question? Would you be willing to amend the bill to include elected school board members, because they are elected officials as well, in the cases where they are elected, not appointed?
I would not, because it's a different subject matter. I think that is a different. I think your concern is right, but I think it's a different bill. This just really is just speaking to state central committee members and elected office.
Okay.
Any further questions for Delegate Boyce? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Delegate Boyce, and that concludes the testimony on House Bill 160.
Thank you all.
Now we have, I think, about 5 bills from one of our favorite delegates in the General Assembly, Delegate Ben Brooks. So first, Delegate Brooks, I'll call House Bill 58, and you have yourself and one witness, Amanda Best, who I see is in here. And so for Ms. Best, there is a timer. She will have 2 minutes, and she can see the timer on her screen, and I'm sure it will ding or something fanciful when her time is up. But whenever you're ready, Delegate Brooks, please begin.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And Chairman Atterbury, Vice Chair Washington, and members of this esteemed committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Ben Brooks, and I represent the 10th Legislative District in Baltimore County. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you on HB 58. Yeah, this is the income tax energy efficiency upgrade, better known as passive homes. Now, the purpose of this bill is to provide credits for the installation of energy efficiency products in residential properties, which qualifies or meets that, what we call that passive home standard, And a passive home normally would reduce the energy usage by about 90%, And then now this bill, here again, what it does, once you make that investment to bring in these upgrades, you could get up to a 10% credit on that particular project with a maximum credit of $2,000, Now, the passive home is not a brand, but it is a building standard, and that building standard is geared toward efficiency, We want to install or put in a continuous insulation, airtight construction. We want to optimize windows and ventilations. Now, we're talking about what we call the envelope, and that passive home envelope, it minimizes heat loss, And what's on the interior, we want to stay there. What's on the exterior, we want that to stay outside as well. But here again, by reducing your energy usage by 90%, it goes a long way into trying to meet that procedure, that's the Clean Energy Jobs Act that we passed a couple of years back, where we wanted to get 50% of our energy from renewable sources. Well, this will lend itself to that. Here again, as you know, in order to get people to invest in technology to mitigate, reduce our carbon footprint, there have to be incentives. And this is one incentive I think would lend itself to that. So for that reason, I request a favorable report.
Thank you, Delegate Brooks. And now Ms. Best.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm Amanda Best, a Senior Commission Advisor with the Maryland Public Service Commission, and I'm here today in support of House Bill 58. The Maryland Public Service Commission oversees implementation of the Empower Maryland program by the participating utilities in Maryland. Empower has been in effect since 2008 when the General Assembly passed the Empower Maryland Energy Efficiency Act as a way to meet electricity demands for consumers and to reduce electricity consumption and peak demand in a cost-effective manner. Through mid-year of 2020, Empower has saved over 12.6 million megawatt hours of electricity and over 2,700 megawatts of peak demand, and generated $1.29 in benefits to Marylanders for every $1 invested in the programs. The results of Empower support that weatherization can achieve significant energy savings in residential properties by offering a tax credit to customers for the energy efficiency upgrades and for meeting passive house standards in House
Okay,
Bill
I'm muted
58.
and my
The
camera's off.
state will
even though it
further
sounds
its
like
objectives
paying attention.
established under the Empower Maryland Act.
Okay, yeah, I'll just turn
Encourage
this.
customers to make energy efficiency upgrades
Oh, I
and
see.
help customers further reduce their energy usage, control their utility bills, and add value and comfort to their homes. For these reasons, we support House Bill 58 and urge a favorable report. Thank you for your time and consideration of this testimony.
Thank you, Ms. Best. Are there any questions for Ms. Best? Seeing none, that concludes the testimony for House Bill 58. Thank you, Ms. Best. Delegate Brooks, just sit tight. We will move on to House Bill 85, and you have 3 witnesses, so we'll just bring them in and then we'll start.
Okay.
And yeah, I think they're coming in. Delegate Brooks, you can begin.
Okay. Good afternoon again. I'm Chairman Atterbury, Vice Chair Washington, and the members of this esteemed committee. For the record, again, I'm Delegate Ben Brooks, representing the 10th Legislative District in Baltimore County. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of HB 85 as income tax healthy indoor air tax credit. This tax credit, well, the purpose of this bill is to allow investments in say equipment or upgrades that will help improve the indoor air quality, enhancing ventilation and filtration through bipolar, I should say, ionized technologies and ultraviolet lighting. I guess we could all argue that this probably is an ideal time for a bill of this nature because of the challenges that we're having with COVID-19, of course, the Delta variant, and now Omicron, So this bill here again provides that incentive, to allow individuals to make that investment to improve air quality, thereby improving health. So for that reason, I ask for a favorable report.
Thank you, Delegate Brooks. Is Mr. John Van Horn? You will have 2 minutes to testify.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Washington, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today in support of the Healthy Indoor Air Quality Tax Credit. My name is John Van Horn, and I'm the General Manager of Arundel Cooling, a family-owned and operated business since 1971. We are a small HVAC company based in Lincoln, Maryland. I also serve as the board president for the Heating and Air Conditioning Contractors of Maryland, also known as HACC, and I'm honored to be representing our trade association of over 150 member companies here today. HACC respectively asks the committee to vote in favor of this bill. The purpose of this bill is to help Maryland families and small businesses invest in an indoor air quality improvement that can help mitigate the spread of COVID and other airborne disease and support public health over the long term. In our work, we see air quality issues every day in homes and small businesses. Luckily, there are solutions, proven technologies like high MERV filters and implemented enhanced ventilations that can dramatically improve indoor air quality when they are installed properly by a licensed contractor who understands the building HVAC system. An indoor air quality tax credit would help Maryland small businesses make important improvements to safely remain open during the pandemic and help Maryland families improve the health and safety of their homes. This bill would also provide direct economic stimulus and support local jobs because HVAC work is inherently local and requires boots on the ground. My company, for example, currently employs 12 HVAC technicians who are trained to install these technologies. I respectfully ask the committee for a favorable report on this bill to support all these lasting and long-term benefits of indoor air quality improvements. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you. Next, Sarah Price, you will have 2 minutes to testify.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, honorable members of the committee. My name is Sarah Price, and I'm here on behalf of the Maryland Retailers Association. We represent businesses of all sizes across the state, including every small business that is located in an officially designated main street in Maryland. You have our written testimony, so I will keep it brief. We would like to thank the sponsor for bringing forward this proposal again. We believe that allowing business owners to claim a credit for some of the cost of this air quality equipment could have a real positive impact on business owners that are considering the best way to keep safe and healthy while still struggling to balance out their operating costs amid labor shortages, supply chain issues, and decreased foot traffic. Installing equipment like this would have a positive impact on the public health in Maryland, not only right now, but also during any future period of airborne disease like our average flu season. With this in mind, we would urge a favorable report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the bill sponsor or his panel? Delegate Lukey?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And Delegate, thanks for bringing this bill again. I appreciate what you're trying to do here, particularly given the era we're in with COVID. So I have to ask, and this is a question I ask a lot with income tax credits of this kind, if the goal is to incent a certain behavior, right, to incent the improvement of dwellings and businesses with this type of equipment, the use of the tax code to do it would seem to be relatively inefficient, because you only gain a benefit if you have tax liability, and the benefit you gain has to wait until you file your taxes. So have you given any consideration as an alternative to a tax credit of simply creating an expanded grant program under MEA or someone else to provide direct grants rather than doing it as a credit?
Well, in the past, well, not in the past, but normally this is the way we have been incentivizing people to invest in technologies or things we feel as though that's going to benefit them, and of course benefit the state as well. That's something perhaps we could look at in another bill, a grant. Right now, I was looking at of course, mostly everything is driven by the fiscal note, and I think I was trying to look at it from a fiscal responsibility as well on our part. I think here again, that's something I could look at, but I hadn't thought about it in that respect. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, we should talk about it a little bit further, I think, because the fiscal note, I was when I was first reading to it, I was a little confused at first too, because the projected number up front is what, 123,000 for the first year. But then later in the fiscal note, it says, based on an analysis of similar programs, the actual liability for the state could be in the range of $20 million, which is, significant. So I'll find you, we can chat it over, but.
Oh, okay, yes.
Any further questions for the bill sponsor or his panel? Seeing none, thank you. That concludes the testimony on House Bill 85. Moving forward to House Bill 103. I see your witnesses is already in, so Delegate Brooks, you may begin.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Good afternoon again, everyone. Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Washington, and members of this committee. Thank you. For the record, I'm Delegate Ben Brooks, representing the 10th Legislative District in Baltimore County. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of HB 103. This bill, the purpose of this bill to establish a tax credit for disabled American veterans that will sort of parallel with that veteran's degree of disability. Pardon me on that. Yeah, and here again, the percent of disability will correlate with the amount of tax credit that individual will get. Right now, only veterans who have 100% disability can get the full credit. Here again, this bill will allow you to parallel that disability with the amount of with the percent of disability with the amount of credit that particular disabled veteran could get. As you all are aware, I am a U.S. Army veteran who had the honor to serve this country in Vietnam, And like many of my comrades, I too had been afflicted by some of the hazards of war. And that Agent Orange, it was a defoliant that was used, sprayed very, very heavily from 61 to 71, And it subjected the troops to numerous hazards, including cancer. Here again, I was 19 when I was in theater. The average age of the Vietnam vet was 19. We lost like 58,000 comrades in that war. And 47,000 was due to combat. So while I commend the state on their current statute of recognizing and supporting 100% disabled veterans, but we cannot neglect those other disabled veterans. HB 103 rectifies this gap. Maryland residents whose military service resulted in levels of disability should be able to find some type of comfort in the fact that Maryland will lend a helping hand here. The life of disabled veterans are hard enough, So this is one way that we can perhaps make that lift or make their remaining years here a lot easier. Yeah. There is just some concerns about vets, we Title 38 say we earn this, and oftentimes the federal government falls a little short. This is a way this particular state can be a leader and come and pick up that little bit of slack. So for that reason, I ask that you support this bill, and I think that there was an amendment that you should have on this bill. But I made a promise to myself when I got back in country and when I became a legislator, I should say, that each year I'm going to try to do something to help veterans, because a lot of these guys made some tremendous contributions to protect our freedoms, and I think we should at least acknowledge that in some way. Thanks, and I ask for a favorable report.
Thank you, Delegate Brooks. I see Delegate Ebersol and then Delegate Barnes. Delegate Ebersol?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Delegate Brooks, great idea here. I'm looking at the fiscal note, and it's estimating, they're saying they're based on assumptions that 3.9 million, based on the idea that there are a little over 370,000 veterans living in Maryland, and 20% of them have a service-connected disability rating. Does that sound about right to you? I mean, have you got figures that are different or the same as that?
Right. Yeah. From the information I've got, you've got 24% of the veterans have from 0 to 20% disability. 17% have 30 to 40% disability, and then pretty close to about 15% have 50 to 60% disabilities.
So, and what percent of veterans would qualify for this then? If there are 372,500 veterans living in Maryland, if that's true, this is an assumption that the fiscal note writer made. What percent of those veterans would be eligible for this then?
Okay, well, that would be pretty close to, let me add this up real quick, 24, 30, 40. That would be right at about 24, 34, 36. 40, about 65% or 90,000, either 90,000 vets.
Okay, so that's significantly higher than the fiscal note writer said. They estimated 3.9 million annually impact.
Yeah, but if you were to take that, you're talking about the state impact. You were to take that 3.9 million, and you were to divide that by what, 24, 23 counties in Baltimore City, you're talking about what, 1.7 million a year. So, when we look at it from a budgetary perspective, that's really peanuts. And that's a small contribution that you can make.
I appreciate that way of looking at it. Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Delegate Barnes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think Delegate Eversole was going in the same direction that my question is, and that's centered around the fiscal note. And so right now, Delegate Brooks, roughly how many veterans do you know are taking advantage of this tax credit at 100%?
The only one that can at 100%, I didn't go back and look at that because there is no question on their behalf. They're getting that. I'm concerned about the ones who have those disabilities and are not getting that. But I can circle back and get you that information, sir.
Right, but looking at the fiscal note and the number of veterans that we have here in the state of Maryland, and putting out this type of tax credit, I think it will surpass what the fiscal note writer has already indicated because of the sheer number of veterans that are in the state. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, we're talking about the fiscal note. I think there's also a fiscal responsibility here as well, and it's we need to acknowledge the contributions that they've made, and yeah, we can question it on that level. We oftentimes we talk about what it's going to cost us. There are other ways we bring funds into the state. Let's just take it back to the TCJA, the Tax Cut Jobs Act. When we did nothing to influence it, but we got a windfall from the limitations on state tax, property tax and state income tax write-offs. Well, the first year, $453 million, and then that runs until 2025 when the TCJA sunsets. So when we balance it out in that perspective, this sort of pales into comparison, So, but I can get you the hard number, sir.
Well, let me just say, I totally agree in comparison to the sacrifice that they have made, and I thank you for your service. Just like yourself, I served in the United States Navy and the United States Army, so I am sympathetic to what you're trying to do here. But at the end of the day, I think there's a way that we can create a win. So let's sit back and have another conversation and how we can try to make something happen for these veterans.
Sounds like a winner, sir.
Thank you.
And Delegate Barnes does have two witnesses for this bill, but Delegate Palkovich-Carr and then Delegate Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Delegate Brooks. It's good to see you. I don't believe your amendment has been distributed yet to committee members, or perhaps I just haven't seen it yet. I wanted to ask specifically about the testimony that Mako and MML submitted, asking that the bill be made enabling instead of mandatory at the local level. I'm wondering if your amendment addresses that.
Yes, it does. It does. It is enabling. Yes. Yeah. Their concern was mandates, but this gives the states the opportunity to, institute it or not. So yeah, it is enabling. Yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
Delegate Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate Brooks, thank you for bringing this bill. It's a great bill. One of the things I would like to see, I understand because it was a mandate, now it's enabling. Couldn't you contact the VA and find out the percentage of veterans in Maryland and the number of their disability as far as percentage, so we could get more of an accurate cost? Because this is not going to give them a complete tax credit, correct?
Right. Yeah. No. This credit would be in relations to their percent of disability. Yeah. So we could go back and here again, these as you know, they're guesstimates. So we can come up with some other guesstimates if you'd like. Yes.
Well, it was just a suggestion because I know the VA should have records of Maryland veterans and how much
Yes.
what their percentage of their disabilities are because of related issues. And thank you again for serving our country and what you did. And I have personal knowledge about what Agent Orange has caused, and now it's really taken large effect on a lot of our veterans that serve. So thank you.
Okay, you're quite welcome, and we'll circle back to you with that information.
Okay, if there are no other further questions for Delegate Brooks, we'll move on to his witnesses. First, Annette Garland, and you will have 2 minutes to testify.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Annette Garland, and I'm the proud spouse of a disabled veteran here today to support this proposed legislation, House Bill 103, Property Tax Credit for Disabled Veterans. Delegate Brooks has graciously sponsored this legislation again this year, so I thank him again. The purpose is to ensure that all Maryland disabled veterans receive a property tax credit on their primary residence based upon their VA service-connected disability rating. Currently, the property tax exemption is only available to the veterans that are rated 100% by the VA. Statistically speaking, this is potentially leaving about 70,000 Maryland disabled veterans that may own homes ineligible to receive a property tax credit for their primary residence. Homeowners, especially disabled veterans, are facing challenges in continuing to afford their homes and stay in Maryland. The current pandemic has only further pulled the curtain back on this struggle, as demonstrated by the governor's January 5th announcement of the Maryland Homeowner Assistance Fund to help keep Marylanders in their homes. Like Delegate Brooks said, disabled veterans face more challenges than the average population. Many are unemployed, underemployed, or one illness away from losing everything and depend upon their service-connected disability compensation to survive. Often disabled veterans have suffered service-connected injuries and are never compensated by the VA. In fact, the average disability rating for disabled veterans is only 40%. Unfortunately, Maryland's consistently high property taxes has served as a deterrent for disabled veterans to remain in the state. Last year, Bankrate ranked Maryland as the worst state for retirement, and included in their ranking criteria was property taxes. Retirees, including disabled veterans, are fleeing Maryland for more tax-friendly states. It's time to pass this legislation to encourage disabled veterans to not flee the state. It serves its purpose as to not only encourage them to move to Maryland and buy a home, but to also stay here in retirement.
Thank you. Ms. Garland, could you wrap up, please?
Yes. Feel free to ask me any questions in regards to the data, because I do have the numbers that the other 3 or 4 inquiries were asking about in regards to fiscal impact.
Thank you. Next, we will have Kevin Kinnelly from MACO. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Kevin Kinnelly here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties in support of House Bill 103 with the sponsor's amendment. You do have my written testimony. I'd like to make a few brief points. Number one, I'd like to thank the good delegate for offering this amendment, because without the amendment, the bill is a significant unfunded mandate on local governments. And with this local option amendment, it relieves that mandate, and instead it allows each jurisdiction to weigh these costs appropriately with the local input from the communities that they serve. So again, thank you to the sponsor for working with MACO over to the interim to address these concerns, because generally this is the right way to do this. The state provides a tax benefit, and then it offers counties the flexibility to offer the same benefit locally. And that way, each jurisdiction that chooses to enact the credit can tailor it to their specific community needs and goals. And it gives counties broad discretion to determine how much revenue they're willing to forego to provide the desirable benefits enabled by the bill. So I think this is a great example of local governments working with state policymakers to develop flexible and optionable tools to create broad or targeted tax incentives while maintaining that local input. So again, thank you to the delegate for offering this amendment. And with that, MACO urges a favorable report on House Bill 103 with the sponsor amendment, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for either of these witnesses? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for coming to testify today. And that concludes the testimony on House Bill 103. Moving on to House Bill 124. And we just have Delegate Brooks signed up to testify. So whenever you're ready, sir.
Thank you, Chair Atterbury. Good afternoon again, everyone. For the record, I'm Delegate Ben Brooks. This bill, House Bill 124, thank you for the opportunity to testify on its behalf. Another subtraction modification here. The purposes of this bill is to allow a $3,000 subtraction modification for any veteran, any individual who served and protected this country and were discharged honorably, you know. And this is just a way of saying thank you for protecting and serving. And just that simple. It's not a heavy lift on this one, but just a way of saying thank you for your service. And I'll entertain any questions, and I'll also ask for a favorable report.
Thank you, Delegate Brooks. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the testimony on House Bill 124. Moving to the last bill for today's hearings, House Bill 186. And we have Delegate Brooks and one other individual. So whenever you're ready, Delegate Brooks, take it for the last time today.
Okay, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Washington, members of this committee. Good afternoon again. Delegate Ben Brooks, 10th Legislative District, Baltimore County. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you on behalf of HB 186. This is an income tax modification for centenarians. The purpose of this bill is to provide a tax credit or subtraction modification for anyone who has been fortunate enough to reach that centenarian age of 100. This bill will apply beginning in tax year, after tax December 2021. According to the Comptroller's Office, we got 850 taxpayers in the state of Maryland who has reached that age. Out of that, about 410 will benefit from this particular subtraction modification. And right now, you know that currently anybody who reaches the age of 65 would qualify for the pension exclusion on that pension income. 65 were disabled, and I think last year was like $34,300, you know. Of course, this bill would take that into consideration and get it up to the maximum of $50,000. Yeah. So, and this, and the inspiration behind this bill, I was at a birthday party, and this lady, who was 100 years old, and we were talking, she found out that I, did taxes, we were talking, and she said, is there ever a time in life where we don't have to pay taxes? And that's, well, basically taxes based primarily on income as opposed to age. But but I did say that this is one way that one could perhaps start making some encroachment into getting to that point of, at least for those centenarians, give them this say write-off of this benefit, since they've been fortunate enough to reach that age. And here again, the fiscal note, it won't be extremely high because the universe is so narrow. So, but that was the inspiration behind this bill. So with that being said, I'll ask for a favorable report, and I'll entertain any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We will hear from Tammy Bresnahan. I hope I pronounced that right, and you will have 2 minutes to testify.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, you did pronounce my last name right. I'm Tammy Bresnahan. I'm the Director of Advocacy for AARP Maryland. And like Delegate Brooks said, living to 100 is exceptional, and it's something that AARP tries to honor. And I don't know if many of you know, but Baltimore County actually does a centenarian's birthday every year, where they bring their centenarians together and they give them lunch. Now, of course, during the last couple of years of COVID, we have not been able to have that celebration, but we are happy to be a proud sponsor of celebrating our 100-year-old members and citizens. To live to be 100 is phenomenal achievement for anyone, and I'm sure you all can imagine. Reaching 100 years of age signifies a life goal for both men and women. And the CDC reports that roughly 70,000 people living in the United States, about 2% of the population, which I think Delegate Brooks estimated, doesn't seem like it's very much. It does seem like it's something that Maryland should do for its older citizens. And we really thank him for bringing this bill forward the last couple of years. It is a way to recognize those that have lived to be 100. I've lost both of my parents, one in his 40s and then my mom in her 80s. And so it really is reassuring to see that there are people that live to be 100. Thank you very much for allowing me to testify today. And thanks, Delegate Brooks, for bringing it forward. And we ask for a favorable report.
Thank you. Any questions for Delegate Brooks or the witness? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the testimony for House Bill 186 and for all of Delegate Ben Brooks' bills. Thank you. If I could just have the committee members hang on just for 1 minute while we go off the air.